Sex asks you to be present, and shame asks you to disappear. And for a lot of people, those two things are happening at exactly the same time. And in today's video, we're going to look at how the emotional template you inherited in the early part of your life informs your adult erotic template, and what that means for both anxious and avoidant attachment styles in the bedroom, and also what it actually takes to begin to heal, not outside of sex, but within it. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, welcome. I'm Cyndi Darnell, sex and relationship therapist, working with all kinds of people in all kinds of relationship configurations all over the world. And on this channel, we have the discussions that many of us have in our heads, but not out loud. Here, we talk about relationships, desire, intimacy, connection, friendships, emotions, grief, and what gets in the way. And if that's what you're here for, you're in the right place. So let's get into it today. So before any of us ever had a word even for love, we had a felt sense of it, or we felt the absence of it without even recognizing it. Because our earliest relationships, the ones that we had no choice about, no language for, and no ability to leave, teach our nervous systems what closeness feels like, and whether or not it's safe, whether our needs would be met, or whether we would be punished or simply just ignored. We learned early on whether the people that we depended upon could be trusted to stay with us. And this learning didn't just stay in our childhood. We didn't grow out of it. It becomes the architecture of our inner world, the template through which every subsequent relationship gets filtered, at least initially. So then when sexuality emerges, it doesn't arrive into neutral territory. It arrives into that template, into a nervous system that already has pretty strong opinions about closeness and distance and vulnerability and need. And so this means that our erotic lives are not entirely separate from our attachment histories, because to some degree, our sexuality and our sexual lives grow out of our attachment lives. And it's important to remember that not everyone experiences a perfect match between how they love and how they like to have sex. And that is not really even the goal. But sometimes the gap between them can be so vast, it becomes a source of distress. So the things that turn us on, the things that shut us down, the distance that we need to feel free, the closeness that we need to feel safe, some of it may be random. We're still not entirely sure scientifically why people like the things they like sexually and why some people like different things. And some is very likely a direct response to our early attachment patterning. So it's likely a blend of both. But regardless of whatever you're into and your orientation and how you like to give and receive love, it's important to remember that none of this is pathology. It's just the body doing what it's learnt to do, doing what it knows how to do, even if it's not entirely in alignment with what you want intellectually or how you want to feel emotionally. Now, if this sounds complicated, it is, you're right, because for many of us, sex is the place that unprocessed emotions go to get processed. So it's very likely that sex is the place we come face to face with some of our most complicated inner world feelings, including feelings like shame. So shame isn't only just a thought. It's also a physical event. So when it arrives, and in sexual contexts, it can arrive fast and often without warning. It tends to do very specific things to the body. It contracts, it withdraws, it moves attention away from sensation and towards surveillance. So suddenly, you're no longer in your body having an experience. You might be above it, watching, assessing, managing from a distance, tracking your partner's response, or monitoring your own performance. And then wondering what this means. What are they thinking? Whether you're too much or whether you're not enough. And through this, you might notice that you lose arousal or lose attention or lose enthusiasm. And maybe because of that, you start spiraling, leaving your partner wondering where the heck you went. And so the very state that sex requires, presence, sensation, and surrender to the moment, is the same state that shame most effectively dismantles. And for people who carry significant shame around desire, around their bodies, around needing things from other people, this mightn't be an occasional thing. It's just the water that you swim in. So then sex becomes a place where the body is present, but the self is somewhere else entirely, managing the situation from a safe distance. And then all of this is happening at the same time, the history and the present moment, the genuine wanting and the fear of what wanting costs. The body that is here and the self that is somewhere just above it, just watching. And none of these layers pause for the others, which is part of what makes shame in the erotic space so disorienting. Because you can want something and be terrified of it and be in the middle of it and be nowhere near it, all at the same time. So we're going to look now at avoidant attachment and how it impacts sexuality. If you have an avoidant attachment pattern, sex might be one of the easier places in your relationship, at least at the beginning, at least for a little while, because sex at a certain kind of distance is available to you in a way that emotional intimacy isn't. So when the stakes are lower, when the relationship is new, when no one knows you yet, when nothing has been promised, your body can relax into it. The unknown has a particular kind of freedom to it, that you can take risks with a stranger that might feel less possible with someone who matters to you. Because a stranger can't really see you. They can't really confirm your worst fears about what might be sitting underneath. And so this novelty, that works as a nervous system regulator, something new, something charged with possibility, something that hasn't yet accumulated the weight of being known. And that can feel like desire, and sometimes it is. But it's also underneath the nervous system, finding one set of conditions in which closeness doesn't trigger the alarm system. The excitement and the self-protection are running at the same time, indistinguishable from each other, which is part of what makes it feel so alive and so sexy. But then something shifts. Often it's gradual, and actually for some people it can hit all at once. And then this person that you're with, all of a sudden they start to matter. And the sex that used to feel easy doesn't feel easy anymore. And so you're there and you still want them. But something inside you is also pulling back, tightening, retreating, and you can't explain why, because the cognitive part of you knows that this is good, this person is safe, while somewhere an older and deeper part of your nervous system is doing something that doesn't respond to logic or reassurance or any of the things that you tell yourself. And this is one of the quieter heartbreaks of avoidant attachment. The more someone matters, the harder it gets to stay present in the moments that ask the most of you. Because real tenderness during sex, being seen in a moment that you can't control, your partner's eyes finding yours at exactly the wrong moment, your body braces against all of this, not because you don't feel anything, but because you feel so much that the feeling itself is the warning signal, right? And this is a very specific kind of loneliness to live inside, as I'm sure you know, if you're impacted by this. And so your retreat is not because you're indifferent. It's often because of protection running in a body that learned very early that needing someone was generally where things go wrong. And underneath all of that is the longing for connection, which was never actually the problem. And that longing has never actually left you. It's still there, but makes it so harder to access because the trouble is, while all of this is happening, you can see it happening. So you can watch yourself pull away at the exact moment closeness is possible. You can know its history rather than truth and understand the pattern completely and still feel your body do it anyway. And the story that forms around that watching, that you ruin the things you most want, that something is fundamentally broken, becomes its own reason for you to keep your distance from yourself and from your partner and from the parts of you that are still underneath everything, hoping that somebody will find their way in. So let's pause for a minute here and do a little practice. Before sex, or before any moment of intimacy that feels charged or risky, there's something very simple that you can do. And it involves you arriving into your body first. So bring your attention to the physical sensations that are available to you right now. Feel the weight of yourself against the surface that you're on. Feel the temperature of the air. Feel your own breath. Not controlled, but just noticed. And if there's a hand available to you, your own or someone else's, feel the warmth of it somewhere on your body. Remember, you're not trying to manufacture desire or openness. You're not trying to manufacture anything. You're just giving your nervous system a moment to register. I am here. I'm here now. And I don't have to manage this from a distance. So allow yourself to sit with this for, say, 30 seconds. It won't dissolve all of the history, but it gives the body a different starting point. One where sensation is possible rather than one where surveillance has already taken over. So let's pivot now and look at how anxious attachment shows up during sex, because sex for someone with an anxious attachment pattern is rarely just sex. And to be fair, sex is rarely just sex for any of us, but this is especially true when anxiety shapes how you move through intimacy, because underneath the physical experience, something else is almost always running. A question, a need, a bid for something that words and direct requests may feel too risky to reach for. So for someone with an anxious attachment pattern, desire often doesn't start from a private internal place. It doesn't begin with, I want this. It doesn't begin with a sovereign internal longing that belongs only to you. It begins instead with, I want to be wanted, with the hunger to be chosen, seen, and confirmed. To have someone else's desire land on you and feel, for a moment, like proof of worthiness or love or being important enough to matter. And this isn't a lesser form of desire. Wanting to be wanted is a genuinely human thing, and it belongs in sex. It belongs in intimacy. The longing to be chosen by someone, who could choose anyone, makes us feel special. And that's part of what makes our erotic lives alive. But when it's the only form that desire takes, when your entire erotic experience is organized around your partner's response to you, something inside you gets lost. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because two things are happening at once and they're pulling in the opposite directions. So your nervous system is reaching for confirmation. I'm wanted, I'm enough. Does this mean what I need it to mean? While underneath that, your own body is having a separate experience that nobody else is attending to, including you. You're tracking their face and feeling your own sensations at the same time. You're inhabiting the present moment, but you're also running the history of every time closeness doesn't hold at the same time. You're genuinely connected to this person, and somewhere underneath, you're completely alone with yourself at the same time. And the monitoring isn't a distraction from desire. For a lot of anxiously attached people, it is the desire, or the form desire has learnt to take when your own internal experience feels less reliable than your ability to read the room. But your body is still there underneath it all, still having sensation, still carrying something that wants to be felt rather than just performed, and still asking a question that rarely gets answered. What do I actually feel right now? Not about them, not about your partner, not about whether or not the sex is working, but in my own body, in this moment, as a distinct and living thing. Because you can be in bed with someone who wants you, who is fully present, who's giving your nervous system everything it asked for, and you can still feel alone. And that isn't because the connection between the two of you isn't real. but because there are two of you in the room, but only one of you is being attended to. And it's important that we don't think of this as failure. And instead, I want to invite you to consider that this is what happens when desire forms itself entirely around another person's gaze before it ever gets to know its own. And when a partner's desire naturally wanes, as everyone's does, it doesn't just feel disappointing. It can feel like the entire ground is disappearing, because somewhere underneath that, the anxiously attached person has learnt to read physical withdrawal as emotional abandonment. And the cognitive part knows that this is not necessarily true, but the nervous system doesn't care what the cognitive part knows. Now, let's look at the shame underneath both of these attachment styles. Because what anxious and avoidant attachment have in common, even though they look nothing alike from the outside, is that they are both trying to solve the same problem. They both developed in response to the same original wounds, those experiences of needing connection and not being able to rely on it. But they just arrived at opposite strategies. One reaches and amplifies and pursues, and the other withdraws, suppresses, and disappears. And in both, shame is what keeps the pattern locked in. For the avoidant person, shame says, "You're too shut down to be loved properly. You ruin closeness. You don't know how to stay." And then for the anxious person, shame says, "You're too much. Your need is a burden. You want things that reveal something broken in you." Different sentences with the same verdict. And in both cases, the erotic life bears the weight of it. Sex becomes the place where the deepest fears about ourselves get enacted in real time with another person in a body that has nowhere to hide. And the thing you most want from sex, to be truly met, to feel another person's real presence against your own, to be known in the most vulnerable possible moment and found acceptable, is the thing that shame has made most dangerous. The wanting and the fearing are pointing at exactly the same place. So let's take another pause here for another somatic practice. Because when shame fires in the body during intimacy, you will often feel it as a tightening or a withdrawal of attention or a sudden sense of being watched rather than felt. And the instinct is either to push through or to disappear. But here is another option. I want to invite you to try 2 short inhales through the nose, stacked immediately one after the other, and then 1 long, slow exhale through the mouth. This practice activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of you that can assess whether this moment is actually dangerous, the part of you that we need online to be able to relax and stay present at the same time. And you can do this during sex. You can do it in the moment before you're about to ask for something you've never asked for. You can do it when your chest tightens and when you feel yourself start to leave your body. Let's try it now. One more. It won't dissolve the shame, but it will give you just enough room to stay when it hits, which sometimes that is the whole practice. Healing in the erotic space doesn't look like arriving at a version of yourself that is finally free of all of this. It doesn't look like desire that's uncomplicated by history or sex that's untouched by shame. That is not the goal here. But it does look like staying a little bit longer in the discomfort of being seen, or asking for one thing that you normally would have stayed quiet about. It's about letting tenderness land instead of deflecting it, or noticing when you've left your body and, without judgment, without a story about what it means, simply deciding to come back. Because that childhood template that shaped your erotic life wasn't intentionally chosen by you. You didn't decide to need distance to feel free or to locate your desire entirely in someone else's wanting of you. That was learned in conditions that you had no control over by a self that was doing the only thing it knew how to do at the time. But you are not only that version of yourself anymore. You are also now the one who can notice the pattern, who can pause at the threshold instead of crossing over it on autopilot, or who can bring one breath of deliberate presence into a moment that once would have been entirely managed only from a distance. Our bodies learn through repetition, not through insight, and not through understanding the theory of your own attachment style. We learn through doing something different in the body in a real moment with a real person and surviving it, and then doing it again. History and present moment, fear and genuine wanting, the nervous system's old instructions and the new ones you're slowly, imperfectly writing. All of it running at once, which is not a sign that something is wrong. It's just what it feels like to be human in a body reaching towards another person. And you don't have to be healed to begin any of this. You just have to be willing to start here, just as you are, in the fabulous body that you already have. If this has resonated for you, please like, subscribe, and share this video. This is what teaches the algorithm that this content is worth watching. And if you would like to know more about sex, desire, attachment, and intimacy, head on over to my website, cyndidarnell.com. The link is in the description below. You'll find different ways of working with me, from my book, Sex When You Don't Feel Like It, to my online courses, and also opportunities to work with me one-on-one or one-on-two or one-on-three via online video consulting. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me here. I really love this content, and I hope that this content lands for you too. Let me know in the comments, how did this land for you? And also let me know, what would you like to see next time? I really appreciate you being here. Bye for now.